Hi, I'm Stacey Field, Workforce Engagement Coordinator from the Health and Community Services Workforce Council, which is a peak body for Queensland's health and community services workforce. We work collaboratively with government, industry organisations, workplaces, education and training providers, and a range of other stakeholders to ensure the future viability of our industry's workforce. I'd like to welcome you to the first of 3 sessions of the Sector Readiness and Workforce Capacity Initiative module for workforce planning and development. In this session, we'll be focusing on the case for workforce planning and the key activities involved in setting off on the right foot with your own workforce planning process. We'll do this by looking at an overview of the industry's workforce, the importance and definitions of workforce planning, and getting started on your own workforce planning journey. To set the context for workforce planning, I'd like to start by looking at an overall picture of the health and community services workforce. This picture will support the development of a business case for doing workforce planning in your own organisation. The overview I'm about to present is drawn from the 2013 Skills and Workforce Development Report, produced by my colleagues at the Workforce Council. The next edition of this report is currently being updated and should be available from workforce.org.au in around August 2014. The report provides an important overview of what our workforce looks like and what it needs to look like into the future. There are sections related to each of the key sectors. I'm pulling out some important information here, but I'd encourage you to have a look at the detail in the report to help build your own case for workforce planning in your organisation. The health and community services industry is one of the most sustainable and one of the most socially and economically contributing industries in Queensland. We are the largest employer in Queensland, employing 12.7% of all Queensland workers. That's a total of 295,500 workers. We reached this record number in February 2014 following an increase of 13,800 jobs over the previous 12 months. That's an unprecedented 4.9% increase, and it included an impressive 9.8% increase in full-time workers. So despite slowing in the resources sector and recent austerity measures in government funding, the health and community services industry in Queensland continues to show strong signs of not only resilience, but growth. Looking at that growth, our industry has consistently been the primary provider of new jobs in the short, medium and long term. This trend is set to continue, with the health and community services industry in Queensland projected to contribute nearly 1/4 of total employment growth over the next 5 years. These predictions will see a total of 52,400 new jobs in the industry to November 2017. This growth represents the largest employment growth out of all industries in Queensland over the next 5 years, followed by construction, mining and professional, scientific and technical services. At a national level, further employment growth in the industry of 229,400 or 16.3% is expected over the 5 years to 2017-2018. Drilling down a bit and looking at the regional picture, our industry is ranked in the top 4 employing industries in every region in Queensland. Moreton Bay, North Moreton Bay, and Toowoomba rank the highest with 16% of employment in those regions. It's important to note that whilst Queensland's outback region looks low in terms of regional employment share at just 7.6%, health and community services in those regions were still ranked in the top 4 industries within that region. Looking at recent workforce growth for our industry, we can see a great deal of variance across the regions. Here we can see the highest increase in the inner city Brisbane and Moreton Bay regions to the 12 months to February 2014, contrasted with the sharp decline in regional areas such as Queensland Outback, Cairns and Fitzroy. What this highlights is the very real need for collaborative, place-based responses to changes in the regions, whether it's managing growth or decline. As well, it highlights the need to be aware of and analyse each regional context and examine what's happening in response to economic, social, demographic factors, changes that are in some cases heavily influenced by whatever the primary industry is in each region. Community demographics across regions also provide invaluable information about need and service provision. This slide highlights what is probably the most important factor in planning for health and community services, and that's ageing. By 2031, we will have seen significant shifts in the 60 plus age group. An ageing population will see an increase in chronic disease, mental health, dementia, and fundamentally the need for care and caring roles. Related to the ageing population is the ageing of the available workforce. The labour market across all industries is shrinking. 47% of the workforce is over 45. There is much more competition across industries for a shrinking labour pool. Our own workforce picture is slightly dimmer than that. The median age of the health and community services workforce is 43. In other industries, it's 39. Basically, what this means is that our workforce is nearing or entering retirement age slightly earlier than other industries and not necessarily being replaced with new workers. So a response is needed, and soon. If health and community services are to compete and achieve the workforce we need to get strategic about it and plan for the future. We need to be looking at ways to attract people into our workforce, ways to retain the workforce we have for longer, and we also need to be looking at new ways of working to reduce the labour requirements of service delivery. Workforce planning can provide us with ways forward in addressing these needs and issues at an organisational level, as well as at a regional level and sectoral level. So what is workforce planning? Some of the terminology, in particular, workforce planning and workforce development, often get used interchangeably, so it's useful to explore what these mean. Having an understanding of the language will also help you have important conversations with others about workforce planning and getting people on board with the need to develop a workforce plan. This is one of the very important first steps in the workforce planning process. You might hear some folks talk about workforce planning as getting the right people with the right skills into the right jobs. But I like to think of it in terms that include the right number of people with the right skills and capabilities, organised in the right ways, and interacting in the right ways for the sake of better well-being and care for the community. This picks up on the fact that it's not just about numbers and skills. It's also about personal strengths, it's about interactions between roles and how roles are organised. It's also about the core vision and mission of your organisation and of our industry for that matter. So to provide some definitions, workforce planning is about the process of determining the workforce you need for the future, what you have now, the gaps between the two, and the best strategies and actions to respond to those gaps. It's a unique piece of work that includes exploring, researching, analysing, forecasting, and designing. Workforce development, on the other hand, is about the strategies and actions your organisation undertakes to achieve the workforce you need. This is about acting and action. It's about responding, doing, and then reviewing. The link between workforce planning and workforce development is in the process and interaction between the two tasks, like an action learning cycle. This cycle is reflected in the Workforce Council's approach to workforce planning. Our approach is summarised in this framework, which has been developed over years of working alongside health and community services. We'll be working through this framework as we progress through this module, but fundamentally, this framework is about identifying what you need for the future, what you have now, and what you need to address to get where you want to be. While each of the phases are similar in size as they're presented in the framework, the forecast and design phase and the understand and analyse phase are where you spend a significant portion of your time in the planning process. We'll discuss those phases in session 2, but before we leave this session, I'll talk about the first important step in the process, which is scope and engage. The scope and engage stage is about starting your workforce planning process off on the right foot. It's about scoping the parameters of the workforce plan to get a clear picture about the scale of the project, what's in and what's out, and the expectations that you and other key people in your organisation have about what will be included or covered in your workforce plan. Scoping the parameters is also about getting buy-in and support for developing a workforce plan. So whoever is leading or working on the project has a mandate and the resources to move forward with this piece of work. This phase also includes the development of a stakeholder engagement plan for your workforce planning process. This includes doing an upfront analysis of the range of stakeholders that might be associated with developing or implementing your workforce plan. A simple brainstorm and mapping of stakeholders according to their level and interest and their level of influence over the plan will help you to identify the level of engagement and methods suitable for each stakeholder group. This will help focus communication and engagement activities throughout the project. Once you've identified the scale and expectations of the workforce plan and the stakeholders you need to engage throughout its development, it's helpful to create a scoping document that sets out the aims and goals of the workforce plan, who within your organisation is endorsing it, who will work on it, what's in and what's out, and you can also add some information about the internal environment of the organisation and some background to the workforce plan itself. This will be helpful for any future audience to the plan and to understand how it came about. That's all we have time to cover in this first session for the workforce planning module. In the next session, we'll look at how to forecast and design the future workforce. You'll need to build a picture of what you've currently got and identify the gap between these. Thanks for joining in, and I hope you enjoyed this session.